morning, and welcome to Morning Movie News, where, hold on to your butts, Ava DuVernay might actually direct another movie. And not just one other movie, but two other movies, as she is suddenly flush with offers in Tinseltown. So I guess it was a good idea of hers to keep her name out there via social media. And she's making some very interesting moves with some very interesting offers. So let's discuss. Now, the one that's getting all the attention is this Intelligent Life film that Colin Trevorrow co-wrote and developed, of course, of Jurassic World fame, or infamy, as some of you might prefer. But the reason that's getting all this attention is because it looks like Lupita Nyong'o would star in the film. So Ava DuVernay would direct, and she would be doing what she talks about quite a bit, and that is bringing more diversity to, supposedly mainstream film. I would imagine if Colin Trevorrow was involved, and because there's a sci-fi element to it, this would be a pretty big picture. So what's it about? Well, it's called Intelligent Life, and it's about there's a male lead, and he works at the UN as part of the group of people who are, all set to go if we come in contact with alien life to represent humanity. So I guess he's got a lot of downtime. But then, unbeknownst to him, the woman he falls in love with and meets, who's like really interesting, is an alien. And so he finds himself not only in the position that he is trained for, but with an oddly personal bent to the whole thing. Now, I think that sounds like a pretty darn good movie. It also sounds like some movies, though, that have not done particularly well. It sounds a little bit like a Nicole Kidman movie, right, when you think about it, right? But here's the thing. I'm torn. I think that Lupita Nyong'o as the alien is, and also as the alien being a woman. I mean, we've seen that so many times. First off, it's the mystical black character once again, and then also always, it's a woman who's like, I'm a mysterious space person. Oh, I'm like a dream girl from space, etc., etc. I would like to see them switch things around. I would love for Lupita to be the person who works at the UN and she falls in love with a guy who's an alien. I would be like, Ava, just keep going, keep pushing it, keep turning things around. Because, of course, Colin Trevorrow developed this, writing from a male perspective. It's also, and as I said, it's a little cliche. It's a little bit, you've seen it before. Why not really make things interesting? But at the end of the day, even if they don't make any changes, I think that we should support Lupita Nyong'o getting more work because she really needs more work. Like where she's actually on screen, not doing voice work. That's what she's the bulk of her work these days. And then she's also doing the Queen of Katwe, that chess movie for Disney. But even there, the star is the young girl who is the chess champion, not Lupita Nyong'o's character. So I think she also had like another romance she was working on with David Oyelowo potentially, also from Brad Pitt's Plan B. But this would be, I think, a really nice opportunity for Lupita, and she would finally, kind of what we hoped Star Wars would be for Lupita. And she was very good in Star Wars, by the way. That story, that rumor that her stuff needed to be cut down, who knows if J.J. Abrams really did feel that way. But I thought she did a really nice job. So that's the first property. Now, the second one is a really big property, and it's very interesting that Ava DuVernay would be offered this. It's called A Wrinkle in Time. It's that famous children's book, and this is akin to Steven Spielberg directing the BFG, the Big Friendly Giant. I mean, it's like that kind of it's that kind of very hallowed and respected book. So this is, I think, a real test for Ava DuVernay. I think that with Intelligent Life, she's able to really do something modern and, challenge casting rules and stuff like that, and really not have to worry about offending anybody, right? Or being disrespectful to the source material, because it's an original idea. But I think Ava, this is like a really interesting position she's found herself in, because with the second property, A Wrinkle in Time, she has to be true to the book first. And I think she's going to need to prove that Ava DuVernay, and this is a very, fine line to walk, because I think you shouldn't lose the activist part of you. I think it's very important to insist on changes, and I'm sure there are places that you could create changes in A Wrinkle in Time, but at the same time, you can't totally change A Wrinkle in Time to fit what you're trying to advocate, right? So I think she's actually very fortunate to have two properties like this. I hope she takes both of them, and word is she can, because of scheduling, she can do both of these films. And I think it would be great to prove that she's a modern, filmmaker who's very forward thinking, but then also she can be a traditional filmmaker who delivers a classic, right? Like this could be A Wrinkle in Time, it's promotes girls in science as is, so that's very exciting. But this could be something like Narnia, right? So it could be a very popular property. So I think Ava, needs to prove that she can direct anything starring anyone. I think that's something else that should be on her agenda, right? So it's very exciting. I hope she takes both of them. I hope they turn out. I'm a big fan of Ava DuVernay's. I've been frustrated that she won't direct anything. I think she missed a huge opportunity with Black Panther, but it's not only nice to see that she still has other opportunities before her, but A Wrinkle in Time is a Disney film, so she didn't ruin her relationship with that studio by turning down Black Panther, and I think that's very nice to see. So it proves that when she distanced herself from Black Panther, she did it in a really nice way that didn't make Disney hate her. So that's the first story of the day, and I'm very curious how you feel about these two choices for Ava and what you hope that she does with these opportunities. Do you agree with me? An Intelligent Life versus A Wrinkle in Time? What do you think of Lupita Nyong'o in that role as the female alien love interest? And then, how would you, this is a very difficult place we find ourselves in. What do you think? And how would you act yourself in this day and age with filmmaking, trying to maybe change the film landscape, but at the same time, wanting to, still prove that you can be traditional as well. It's really interesting. I guess I would say at the end of the day, you don't want to change just for the sake of change. It has to be organic. It has to be earned. And I think that she has two opportunities to prove that she knows the difference. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second story of the day is Amy Schumer, who continues to really be on a roll. The support that Amy Schumer gets from the comedy community is amazing. Because first off, when she did Trainwreck, she was really totally under the protection of Judd Apatow. He produced it, he directed it, he shepherded that whole thing in, just like he did with Lena Dunham. But Trainwreck, very successful film, really helped Amy Schumer's career move forward even more. She got that Super Bowl commercial with Seth Rogen off of that. She's doing very, very well. All she has to do now is host an award show, and she has arrived. So anyway, she has her next movie coming up, and while Judd Apatow is not attached to this, she's got Paul Feig helping her out, and that's amazing. I mean, talk about an embarrassment of riches. And I think actually I prefer Paul Feig when it comes to female comedians than I do Judd Apatow, because I think Paul Feig has a little bit of a better sensibility. But he's going to be helping her oversee this. Now, this is the vacation action, like Romancing the Stone type movie about a mother and a daughter who go on vacation together and find themselves in danger in an exotic location. So Amy Schumer would be the daughter, and they've been looking to cast her mother, and this is why the story is in the headlines. The Paul Feig thing was like a secondary story, like line in the story, but I thought it was the most interesting. But the big deal is that they need to cast opposite Amy Schumer, right? So they wanted Sally Field. Didn't work out for some reason. Then they wanted Frances McDormand, who I think would have been the most interesting choice. But that didn't work out, unfortunately. And now they've gone to Goldie Hawn, who I have mixed feelings about. I feel with Goldie Hawn, well, on the one hand, it's nice because of her Private Benjamin background. I mean, Goldie Hawn was one of the first really successful female comedians working. So is Jane Fonda, of course, Lily Tomlin. I mean, there are a couple of people that Amy Schumer could definitely pick from. But Jane Fonda, of course, did that movie Monster-in-Law with Jennifer Lopez. That did pretty well, actually. But I think Goldie Hawn has a little bit of a novelty factor to her because it's been so long since she last worked. However, I'd be surprised, Goldie Hawn doesn't really seem like Amy Schumer's mother, but there's something about Goldie Hawn that while it's interesting to have her back in the mix, I think it makes the picture seem a little less biting, right? A little, maybe too traditional. Although that served Amy Schumer quite well with Trainwreck, which was basically just a traditional rom-com with the female and male roles switched. So maybe they'll switch the mother-daughter roles here, and that's how they're, I think Amy Schumer could do more, but Amy Schumer is a good example of someone who doesn't push the edge of the envelope too far and reaps huge benefits because she doesn't make anybody uncomfortable, right? She changes things just enough to make some progress, but yet there's the comforting familiarity of, the usual cliches. So, but Goldie Hawn to me makes it seem a little bit like a low-rent movie, a little bit not like a real, I think it takes a little of the energy out of it. Now, of course, we could change our minds when we see a trailer, but it's interesting to see this picture come together, and I trust Paul Feig. I think Paul Feig has proven that he is wonderful at casting. Very, very, very good. I love the way Ghostbusters is coming together. I really like what he did with Spy and the casting of that film with both the male and female characters, so I really have a lot of faith in him. All right, so that's the second story of the day. Now, the third story of the day is a headline. It's a small headline, but I got a lot of you asking me about it because it's kind of important to the franchise. But Robert Schwentke dropped out of Ascendant, the final Divergent film. He directed Insurgent, and he's directing the upcoming Allegiant, and he was supposed to direct Ascendant, but he's dropped out. So this is the way the media spun the story. And this is the trades when I say the media. And the trades will often do a solid for the companies because they want to maintain a good relationship with them. So they'll spin it for them. So the spin is Lionsgate and Robert Schwentke love each other. Robert Schwentke directed Red for them, so he has a very good relationship with the studio. He's just tired. He needs a break because it was more work than he thought directing Allegiant. So they're scrambling for a new director out of love for Ascendant. Now, here's how I think it went. There's two ways. One, Robert Schwentke really is overworked, and he went to the studio and said, I'm burned out. And nobody wants a director on a very important movie who says they're burned out, right? So, well, Lionsgate might have be a little bit disappointed and probably would maybe think twice before hiring Robert Schwentke again, at least on something this scale. They were like, okay, peace out. You made 2 nice movies for us. We like you. We appreciate your honesty instead of you just killing this picture. So thank you very much. Now we're going to go find somebody else. The other option is that Allegiant it's not particularly good, or they're nervous that it's tracking so poorly in the press. Like, nobody's paying attention to Divergent. And of course, Lionsgate is coming off of the disastrous box office for Mockingjay Part 2. Now, not disastrous like in terms of like the bottom line, but it didn't live up to expectations by far. And this, the Hunger Games franchise is very important to the financial security of Lionsgate as a company. So I think they're like, we can't have 2 of these things crash and burn. So I think that they might be a little bit worried about that. I think that one of the reasons that people, and I've talked about this before, don't talk about the Divergent films, and actually why they didn't talk about Mockingjay Part 2 very much, is that I've mentioned this before, Lionsgate has a very aggressive copyright claiming strategy when it comes to their films online. So you basically cannot discuss their movies unless you're willing to do so for free, and the studio takes that earnings, right? So even if it's a news story, they claim that it's theirs. So I think that's why you don't see any discussion from anyone on any of their movies on particularly like YouTube, etc. So I think that's very interesting, and I wonder how long it will take for them to figure out that that's actually what's hurting their franchises. But anyway, so they have this problem with Ascendant, and so they have to find a new director, maybe to shake things up, maybe make things a little more exciting, maybe try and get a name. So I think they're just trying to make sure that this franchise does okay. We'll see. We'll see how Allegiant does. All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. Now, talking about business, I have a very good business question from Chris Ailman that when I read it, I was like, oh, this would allow me to really clear something up that maybe people actually aren't aware of based on Chris's question. So Chris says, hi, Grace. Thank you for your question, Chris, by the way. So he says, I have a question. Or Chris might be a girl. My mistake, woman, my mistake. Okay, so Chris says, I have a question. I was watching Netflix last night, and a story you covered came to mind. The story was about studios starting to get annoyed with Netflix for bidding for some movies at Sundance at ridiculous prices. Yes, we did discuss that, and it's not that just Netflix and Amazon are getting these movies at Sundance, but they're only getting the subscription video on demand rights, the SVOD rights, and that puts the studios in a difficult, I'm just catching everybody else up, that puts the other studios in a difficult position because they often offset the price of acquiring these movies by selling the SVOD rights to their partners, be it HBO, Starz, etc. All right, so that's the context. So Chris continues saying, knowing that Netflix depends on these movie studios for the majority of its content, do you think it's possible for Netflix to annoy the movie studios to the point where they stop licensing their movies and TV shows for streaming on the streaming service, Netflix? Do you think Netflix is at a point where it doesn't need to rely on their studio's content to succeed? Greetings from Mexico. Hope you're having an amazing day. Smiley face. I hope you're having an amazing day in Mexico too, Chris. That's a great question, and it's very interesting because what's really going on here is that Netflix is a monster that the studios created. All right, so when Netflix first started, it was the first real, genuine commercial streaming site for watching movies. Nobody really believed that people would be into that, right? They thought that this was just like the answer to Blockbuster, but through the mail. However, Netflix obviously became incredibly popular. So all the studios said, wait a minute, why should we let Netflix stream these movies? We can stream our own movies, or we could start a company together. Like Hulu has a lot of studio investors in it. That's why Hulu gets a lot of stuff. Or they're like, we'll just go on demand. And also iTunes came in there and took a lot of this. I think iTunes is the main place to stream modern, mainstream movies today. And maybe they're offering a better deal. Who knows? But basically, all the studios said, Netflix, you're doing too well off of our product, and they took their product away. That's why it's very hard to find a new movie on Netflix. So Netflix saw the writing on the wall, and they were like, oh crap, we're losing all of our content. So that's why they got into the original content business, because they said, we have to make our own or we're going to have no company. And they've done quite well, because they used all the money that they made initially, and also because they do have some content still on there, but they used that to just flat out buy big names and big shows. And they've been very successful in that, to the point where I think most people watch Netflix these days for Netflix's original content, not to stream something else. So I think that the Netflix is already lost with the studios. I think Netflix doesn't care about the studios because they already lost the content. So the studios should, always remember that this is their fault. And that they created a situation where Netflix had no choice but to change to survive, and they changed very, very effectively, to the point where they are a major television and just content creator. First, they've done a great job shaking up TV, and now they're trying to shake up movies, much to the fear of not only the studios, but the movie theater distributors, the exhibitors. Sorry, I have to make sure I get the terminology right. I don't want to confuse anybody. Exhibitor is the movie theater, distributor is the studio, or whoever's distributing the movie. So it's a very interesting situation, but that's what's going on. Netflix, and I'm sure Netflix probably harbors a major grudge to the studios for pulling all their content and almost torpedoing the company. So I'm sure it brings Netflix great joy to create a lot of problems at Sundance, and they can afford to do it, and that's why they can do it. They basically are the big spender in the room. So, but I think Netflix's next hurdle is to actually be able to be successful with these movies, because right now, for instance, Beasts of No Nation went with Fox Searchlight. Birth of a Nation. Birth of a Nation went to Fox Searchlight because of the lack of success for Beasts of No Nation through Netflix. I think they felt, rightfully so, that they're not able to successfully launch an awards contender at this point, and that is the case. And so far, not even a successful movie. So we'll see what happens. We'll see. But Netflix is trying very hard to get into the movie game, and I'm sure that they're excited to hurt the studios a little bit, because the studios hurt them so gravely. All right, so that's what happened. That's a little bit of the history of Netflix and what's going on with that company and the studios. I hope that answers your question, Chris. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Please write down below today's top 3 stories and that viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.